Hello, I think we are live right now.
Live?
USCFootball.com live show. We have Ryan from San Antonio remote. And we have Keely or Shotguns Rattling here in Los Angeles. So it's a nice little multi-state Facebook Live.
We're checking in from across.
Yeah.
We are live now, yes.
Okay, we are live.
Yeah, looks like we're live.
Woo! Okay. As always, leave your comments below. We will try and answer all your questions. We should probably tweet this out so that people know. Oh, Shotgun's doing it. Good job, everyone.
Nice job, Shotgun.
Nice job. Ryan, how
they're trying these things out. It's a good idea that Keely had. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Look at I can fit your little. There's Ryan Abraham and Keely and Shotgun. How's San Antonio, Ryan?
It's pretty cold here in San Antonio. I'm down here for the U.S. Army All-American Bowl practices. The game is actually Saturday, but we don't usually stay for the game. Chris Trevino will be here for the game, but Gerard Martinez, myself, and Chris Trevino are all down here covering the prospects that USC is interested in, or some prospects USC has already signed or committed to USC. So I'm putting up highlight videos. We did a lot of interviews and stuff. So we're down here. It's all that behind-the-scenes recruiting stuff that the fans seem to like.
Oh, very nice. That's cool. How is Gerard handling the cold? I feel like he's not a very cold person.
Yeah, it's we walked around the River Walk. So the hotel here, we're at the Hyatt, the Grand Hyatt, and it's right here on the River Walk. And you walk around there, and it's pretty cold. So we walked to a place for dinner last night, and it was, I don't know, 10-minute walk, and we're both bundled up, hats and gloves and everything. It's pretty cool. But we actually ate outside today. We had a little, Chris Trevino's family is from around here, so they recommended a barbecue joint called King Highway Brew and Q. It was basically a house. I tweeted out some pictures. It's a house. We ate in their front yard. It was kind of strange, but it was very good with good brisket and stuff. So
wow,
I enjoyed it. Yeah. So thanks Chris's family for that recommendation. Local place, we're the Riverwalk, which is lots of tourism stuff, So to go to a little local place like that was pretty cool.
That's cool. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Are you ready to come home though? You've been gone for a while. I feel like.
I've been gone, for a couple of weeks. I was home for about 6 hours between Christmas travel and here. So I'm ready to go home. Tomorrow I fly back tomorrow. So.
Yay! Don't blame you. So if you're just coming in, you can ask us questions and we will answer them. We have a fancy new little answering system. Right now, I can show them rolling. Says hi from Georgia. Hello.
Oh wow!
I know.
Look at that.
I know, right? I found this and it's pretty cool.
I thought you just meant we had an extra secretary or something when you said we got a fancy answering machine.
No, oh my gosh. Also, David.
Did you schedule this too? This was a scheduled thing also?
You could schedule it. I didn't because in case you were fickle, I didn't want to do anything, but you can schedule. It's a pretty nifty app. It's called Be Live. So, and we can switch the camera angles, put you in the corner. Okay. We can go half and half. It's pretty fancy.
Someone's excited about their new product.
I am. I definitely am. I'm a nerd when it comes to these things.
For the ones in LA that we do, I use I think it's OBS Studio or something. It's similar, but I like the way this looks. This is a different feel to it. So maybe we'll play with this one too while we're doing it.
It's pretty cool. So right off the bat, a lot of people are asking about Sam news. Thomas says, any words on Sam? We have Bill who says, any Sam news? Should we start with that?
Who's Sam? Sam who?
Sam, that guy. I think he's a quarterback. So Sam, we talked to him after the game. What did he have to say? I know you were in this room. What do you have to say?
Yeah, he just hasn't thought about it yet. He said he's going to take a couple days, really hug the seniors is the way I think he phrased it. And then he was going to sit down with his family, with the people that, are going to be helping in this decision, and then go from there. So, we talked about all through the season that we didn't think he had a decision. And again, I don't think he has a decision. I know Bruce Feldman said a couple days ago on a show that he thinks it's now 55-45 that he'll leave. I don't know necessarily that I would feel that way. I still think it's, just kind of a toss-up up there, a 50-50 matchup right now. And then once they sit down and start going through things, then you'll start to see, it start leaning one way or the other. But I think it's once he sits down with his family, they have the full-on discussion, they talk with, the advisors or whoever it may be that will be helping make that decision. The coaches, I know Clay Helton was going to talk with Sam. I think it's going to come down to all of that before Sam actually has a decision. And I think it's going to wait. It's going to come out probably, at least till next week before he comes out with anything, I would guess. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to take his time with this. I don't think he's in any rush to make the decision. As far as the quarterback position, it doesn't really matter for USC's recruiting efforts because they have a pretty good quarterback who's showing out pretty well down in San Antonio, JT Daniels, who is reclassified to the 2018 class. A couple of the other positions, particularly maybe Rasheem Green or, a couple of those positions that are up in the air, maybe even Cameron Smith, may determine how many scholarships USC uses at a certain position. I think those are ones that USC's coaching staff would like to know sooner than later so that they can, go full bore at some of these recruits to try to fill their spots if somebody is leaving early. Mm-hmm.
Now, Ryan, how much does a game like the Cotton Bowl affect a possible decision if you're Sam Darnold? Does it really have that much impact?
I thought it would have somewhat of an impact, and I think you kind of look at it from a couple different ways. A lot of people are saying that, he had 22 turnovers this year, which is the same or more than 101 teams in college football in the FBS, so that's a lot. That's a lot of turnovers. He has to weigh, will coming back get you better? Because people assume, well, if he comes back, he gets another year of seasoning. Well, he kind of regressed a little bit this year. So if he comes back, is he really going to get better? Or would you rather go to the NFL? Now, his performance in the Cotton Bowl, you didn't want to see the turnovers like he had, and, he had 3 more turnovers there. So would that have some kind of impact? I think it has a little bit, but I think it's really going to be if he feels that he's ready. If he feels like if he comes back, will it get him more ready? And unfortunately, some of the evidence out there is if he comes back, will he really get more ready? Will he have to talk to Clay Helton like, hey, we need to make sure that I'm getting the right coaching, I'm getting prepared for the NFL. If I come back, I want it to be a positive step and not a negative one. So I think all of that kind of discussion is there. I talked with Yogi Roth after the game a little bit in the Cotton Bowl, and he was thinking about the possibility of, maybe we could announce his decision on their Summer of Sam podcast, which, he was at least thinking about.
Of course, Yogi would want that.
Of course, Yogi would want it. I guess apparently Colin Cowherd came out today and said something that he, was going to return for his senior year. I got some tweets about that. I'm like, I've been in San Antonio covering recruits. I just don't really know the latest and greatest of what's going on in Sam's head. But I agree with what Shotgun's saying. You guys are saying. To me, I don't think he had a decision in mind. No, you're talking about a 20-year-old kid or whatever that, probably has some kind of indication in his head of where he would be leaning towards. But, I don't think the people are saying, like, sources say this, sources say that. I'm not really sure. Maybe he has a decision by now, but I think before the game and, like, soon afterwards, I don't think he really had anything, like, particular in mind.
Interesting. What is a hypothetical timeline, do you think? I know you kind of touched on it. When should USC fans expect to get kind of a decision?
I mean, the decision has to be made by January 15th. That's the last date for players to announce that they're going to enter the NFL draft, to put in the paperwork. You're starting to see some players from teams that had bowl games yesterday. Colton Miller for UCLA announced his decision. Teams that had bowl games earlier, they've had a little more time to go through the decision-making process. I mean, I think UCLA would play 3 or 4 days before USC, so that gives you, going into a week, a little bit more time. I think you'll see USC decisions start to be made for some guys that know what they want to do. I think Ronald Jones is pretty much gone regardless. I think that decision was pretty much already known, though we have not had confirmation. But I think that one could be made as quickly as this weekend, or even, the next 2 days leading up to this weekend, just because he probably already knew going into the game. For the guys that were going to sit down and think about it, I mean, Deontay Burnett was asked about it, and he was like, what? I haven't even thought about that.
He's definitely caught off guard by that.
Yeah, so, the guys that probably should not leave early, but, he was just kind of surprised by it. I think those type of guys are going to take more time. So you see decisions next week. or even the week after that, now that we have, 12 days left before the decision has to be made, going into that Monday, I believe it is the 15th.
Michael Gilmore asks, won't Darnold get better QB coaching in the NFL? Which kind of begs the question that someone else asked, how much does the QB coach at all and his coaching in general, whether NFL or if he stays, has an effect in the decision? Does it at all?
I would think it has somewhat of an effect. I mean, it seemed like he had a pretty good relationship with Tyson Helton, who's obviously moved on to Tennessee. And I think a lot of people assume you're going to get better coaching in the NFL. You talk to Dan Weber, he's like, a lot of the NFL coaches are terrible too. So he's not convinced that if you do go to the NFL, you're going to get kind of better coaching. But I think that has to be part of his thinking, is if he looks at his body of work. I mean, he was sacked, 6 times last season in the 10 games he was playing, and then got sacked 8 times in the Cotton Bowl alone, turned the ball over 22 times. He was a Heisman frontrunner coming into the season. They still had a successful season, winning the Pac-12 and all that. But if he's looking at his own personal draft stock, people are still, they love him because of the upside and all that. But he wants to be able to develop, and he wants to be able to be a better quarterback. And if a lot of people are saying, well, he's got the turnover problems and this and that, I think part of his concern coming back will be talking to Clay Helton and making sure he's going to be coached up and, and get the right help that he needs to succeed at the next level. So I think that's part of the discussion. So who the quarterback coach is going to be, if it's, Brian Ellis, who's the guy that, was the GA that they still have now, or if they're going to go out and bring in a name like, Carson Palmer just retired, whether they would bring in someone like that. I don't know. That could be part of the discussion, I would think. If he wants to return, who's going to be his coach, because he definitely needs to make sure he develops next year. You can't regress 2 years in a row. It's not going to help his draft stock.
The only thing he really regressed in is the turnovers. I mean, besides that, the sacks and stuff, that's more on the offensive line. It's not like he was holding the ball for forever. It was like the Joey Bosa one, the first sack. And granted, everybody wants to blame Daniel Mortabebe, but also Ronald Jones gets some discredit for that as well, some blame, because they had 2 guys to get to him. I think when I was rewatching the game last night, Deontay Burnett was 3 yards down the field in his route. So your slot receiver had made it 3 yards past the line of scrimmage by the time Darnold was getting hit. That gives you no chance at all to make a play there, especially coming from the backside like that. So I think the offensive line concerns are one of the biggest issues if I'm Darnold, because and I actually have had a theory for several years that I think some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL play behind crappy lines in college, because they learn to make quicker decisions. They learn to feel the rush and stuff that you have to do in the NFL, because there's always really good pass rushers in the NFL. Even if you play with an elite offensive line, there's going to be games where you have to, make plays off the spot. And I think that's why the NFL guys really like Sam Darnold. But a guy like Matt Stafford played behind a terrible line at Georgia, and he's gone on to have a really good career in the NFL. I think that actually prepares him a little bit better for the NFL. So I think this year, though it's been a learning and a trying year, will be better for him in the long run. Now, if he's going to come back, that's one of the things I'd be looking at as Sam Darnold is, hey, are you guys going to block a little bit better for me up there? Am I going to have an opportunity to showcase my arm, and also the opportunity to get injured? If you guys aren't going to protect me better, and I get hit like I did in that Texas game, and it seemed like he just was not the same player for a couple games after that, then maybe I need to just go ahead and take the money rather than risking an injury that might derail my career or push me down the draft boards if it's something serious.
Hey,
yeah,
Keely,
that goes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's listener Dan's question. How much will the offensive line weigh in Sam Darnold's decision? You kind of already highlighted that. Ryan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts too. When I had Dan Weber on the podcast yesterday, he felt that, certainly the offensive line, there were some issues there. We thought it'd be a more athletic offensive line this year, not as many big guys, or, like Banner and Damian Mama and guys like that. But it seemed like Sam was able to get away from that first guy all the time last year. And it wasn't really the case. And Shotgun mentioned maybe, one of the hits in the Texas game. Has he been really the same since then? If you guys had any thoughts on that, it seemed like, the sacks are up from last year. And certainly, the offensive line is part of the problem. But some of it too, I think, is Sam wasn't really getting away from the rush like he was as easily as he did last year.
I mean, you have to factor in also that teams now have more tape on him. Yeah. So if you make the same move in the pocket, a lot of times, if you're being rushed from the center and you step to your right or whatever it may be, teams may key in on that and be able to, make some changes in the way they attack you, once they get past the offensive line as well.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about the question that Dan got asked in the podcast about the big bodies of Wheeler and Banner, I think there's something to said for that they're big enough and you have to account for them somehow. I don't know if that was something that played a factor, but I also think that me and Dan have this conspiracy theory a little bit that we talked on this show before about how Darnold just wasn't the same after that Texas game. And I talked to Darnold about it after the ASU game, and he said that his hips just get tight on him sometimes. Wouldn't fully allude to stuff, but you could see him. A lot of people tweeted at me that he would hit his hips or massage his thigh, So I do think in the season he wasn't 100%. How much that affects his running ability to escape the pocket, I don't know. But I definitely think he wasn't 100% during the season. And I know Dan will definitely back me up on that because we have that conspiracy theory.
Yeah. And, that's part of the thing, too. So, I think Shotgun's got a good point. It wasn't like complete regression. He wasn't, but I think he didn't make as many big plays down the field. What was amazing about last year was when he'd get out of the pocket, he'd avoid that rush, that they wouldn't get the sack. It looked like it was going to be a sack. He'd get away, still have his eyes downfield, and find somebody and make the play. And he did that a lot this year, but there was a lot that he missed, too. Like, there were just a bunch of plays he would have hit that last year for some reason. So I think there's all kind of part of it. And, maybe the expectations being so high are a factor in that. But I think all of this, he wants to make sure if he comes back that things will get a little bit better, like on the offensive line, like the questions were. I think all of that has to get better. There's no point of coming back if he's going to turn the ball over 22 more times and, have the issues that you have against some of the better teams like the Notre Dames and Ohio States of the world. So I think there's some really interesting decisions that have to be made by Sam, but also from Clay Helton and the coaching, on his coaching staff. I think there's a lot of pressure, outside pressure to make changes. Will he do that? It doesn't seem like that's really, in his core personality, but, maybe Lynn Swann's putting pressure on him. Maybe Sam Darnold is putting pressure on, hey, I want to make sure I got a good coach and make sure the offensive line is better, stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Clay Helton right now. So much is happening over these next 2 weeks. Like Shotgun said, the deadline being January 15th. It'll affect recruiting. It'll affect, obviously, the team next year. So a lot of changes coming. Well, potential changes coming, and a lot of decisions or non-decisions that have to be made by Clay Helton here coming up.
One positive for USC is that the connection with the young receivers that Sam Darnold now has.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big question early in the season, and the fact that, you look at some of those passes he threw up, and, those weren't getting caught early in the season. The ones in the Cotton Bowl on the edges that Tyler Vaughns and Michael Pittman were both making, those passes didn't get caught. Now he has that same connection. He knows where to throw the ball, and you saw the differences in some of the throws that he made to those guys. Particularly the first throw to Tyler Vaughns wasn't like a deep fade route. Put the ball up there. He threw a bullet. He threw it right at the shoulder of the DB. The DB never even turned his head around. Tyler Vaughns goes up and snags it, pulls it down, and you see that there's now that connection. Whereas early in the season, you saw some overthrows. You saw some different things where they just weren't on the same page, it seemed like. So I think that's one thing that the USC has going for them. I think Sam now feels like he has that connection with his receivers to be able to make plays next season if he comes back. Which
forces the question, why wasn't that connection established earlier? Why weren't you playing certain players that could have had that success earlier? Sorry, I don't know where Shotgun just went. But I mean, PRPs, why not throw more? Why not try and establish that? Or, I mean, they didn't even target Stephen Mitchell that much in the Cotton Bowl. If you're not going to target your senior, why play him in the beginning? Because it felt like they started Stephen Mitchell in the beginning as like a seniority type thing. If you're not going to send him out well as a senior in the Cotton Bowl, why have that in the beginning? I know that's a little harsh, but I'm just saying, like, why?
He was productive at least during the year. Like when the other guys that they started were just kind of like for seniors, and they, my boy Tyler Vaughns, they weren't starting him. Like the biggest crime in college football history, the fact that he didn't start
wow.
the first 5 games. And like the Michael Pittmans of the world and stuff. But when you saw in that game, who made the really tough catches in that one? Like, Deontay Burnett had some rough stretches, but he still performed well. Like, what do you have, 12 catches or whatever? He set a record. They threw a ball at like Vaughn's, basically out of bounds, and somehow he still caught the ball in bounds. Like, those were catches are like, that's not a high percentage catch you expect your receiver to make. He would make them. We saw, Michael Pittman do the same sort of thing. And we didn't really see that from Stephen Mitchell. So it was like, I think he had pretty good production on the year, but as far as like when it was crunch time, like it didn't seem like that's the guy or one of the guys that Darnold was kind of going to towards the end. So I don't think he shouldn't have been on the field, but it did seem like they didn't really trust him like they trusted, some of the other guys.
Well, Stephen Mitchell also has the worst ability to draw a pass interference for whatever reason. Like he never gets a pass interference called against the DB. And twice in this game, once for a touchdown, he was grabbed, and he had stuck his hand out and he touched it with his fingertips, couldn't pull it in. Also, the first, I think, the USC's second drive of the game, they had like a 3rd and 17, 3rd and 18. They throw a comeback. Jeffrey Okudah, the freshman DB for Ohio State, who did a lot of grabbing in this game, he basically clotheslined Stephen Mitchell, and there was no flag called. And it's like, if he was a bigger dude and he got clotheslined, would it help? I don't know. It just seemed like Stephen Mitchell was grabbed a lot this season and could never get that call called for him. I mean, those are 2 big plays right there. If he catches the touchdown pass, but if he's not grabbed and catches the touchdown pass, all of a sudden you say, oh, Stephen Mitchell had a pretty good game still.
Yeah.
So he had no catches in the game, but that was partly because he was getting grabbed all day and didn't get any respect from the referees, apparently.
Yeah.
At least he didn't get the offensive pass interference like Tyler Vaughn's got that one time. So that's that. I'm going to send that guy a nasty gram, by the way, whoever that official was that called that on Tyler Vaughn.
Oh my gosh. Let's move on to another question that I had. Romero says, is Clay Helton's coaching really ready for big-time games outside of the Pac-12?
You take that one, Ryan.
Okay, so is his coaching ready for – I think – he has his own philosophy, right? And he's won some pretty big games outside of the Pac-12. You can't – I get why fans are frustrated. The way they looked in the big out-of-conference games like Notre Dame and Ohio State, but also not really showing that well against the Western Michigan or even against a really mediocre Texas team. They just didn't play up to the part. But if you look at his resume, the teams that he's beat, like he's beat some really good teams. That Penn, obviously the Rose Bowl, carried a lot of weight. I think when you hire a head coach who doesn't have a lot of experience, there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be changes. I think some of it is he learned under, a lot of times you get an assistant coach who learned under like some stud coaches. If it's from Bob Stoops or Jimbo Fisher, whoever it is. Clay Helton was learning from Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin. So that's not exactly like the, murderer's row of head coaches that you were learning under, but he was also under the sanctions too. And it seems like some of the coaching with the practices and stuff are still in that sort of sanctions mentality. So I think some of it is Clay Helton, he can be there, but he has to kind of adapt and adjust to the new game. Now you have a full roster. Now you're the big dog in the Pac-12. You've now won it, for the first time in 9 years or whatever. You have to act like, hey, this is the team to beat in the Pac-12. You have to be that way. I think they're recruited that way. I think they have to kind of, act that way on the field. And part of it's going to be getting a coaching staff together that isn't like people that he knew. He stuck with something very familiar, really close friends of the family, actual relatives and all of that, people that he was really familiar with. I think you can branch out and now go get more Dylan McCullough type coaches. So I think he can certainly get there, but this offseason will determine a lot of that. If he kind of keeps it tight, close to the vest and doesn't go out and go get some guru head, potential assistant coach who has the capability of becoming the head coach at USC someday, I think that's going to be a problem. So I get why you maybe didn't do that at the beginning. Now you've been there for a couple of years. You've had some success. You have to replace some guys that aren't doing, that maybe aren't performing up to snuff. Go get the best people available, people that are good enough to take your job someday. I think that's something he has to do.
Could you say that the Cotton Bowl kind of proved that the difference between hiring a coordinator who's experienced versus not experienced?
It's like you were talking about Urban Meyer. He's a legendary coach. He's got guys like Greg Schiano on his staff, that are, former head coaches in the NFL. Like that, the USC doesn't have people like that on their staff. So I think you have to kind of work up to that. Now, maybe in the beginning it's a little bit harder, but he's won at USC. He's won the Pac-12. He's won the Rose Bowl. And when the last time UCLA won a Rose Bowl? It's been like 30 years. So it's not like he's had no success, but now you can have even more success to get to that next level. I think you have to get guys on your staff like Urban Meyer gets, like Nick Saban gets. Nick Saban's going to have half the coaches in the SEC are going to be his former assistants. You'd love to get to that point. And he didn't do that by losing assistant and going out and getting some GA somewhere. He went out and got the best dude available. And I think USC's got the name. They can go out and get the best dude available. Dylan McCullough is a perfect example. It's not like, Indiana was not this, running powerhouse, but he put dudes in the NFL. He recruited, he developed guys. Just go get the greatest position coach you can find at whatever needs you have. And I think Clay Helton will be fine, but you got to go and do that.
I think it also comes down to USC wanting to pay the money too. We don't know what are the resources that Clay Helton has. We've talked about previously about how they need to increase the support staff. You look at Kirby Smart at Georgia. He came in and added a ton of support staff for their recruiting efforts, and their recruiting efforts are doing really well right now. So that's something that USC has to invest in if they want to compete in the same regard. And that comes from not only Lynn Swann above Clay Helton, but also above that, and the president and everyone on the board of it. Trustees saying, we want to put the money into it. We want USC to be that prestigious football program, because if you're nickel and diming it, you can compete in the Pac-12, but in the rest of the country, when people are 100 billing it, when you're nickel and diming it, you're going to be losing out.
Keely, did someone have a comment that, do you really think? I didn't see the whole thing. Do you really think? I think it was do you really think assistants would come to USC or something like that? Is that what the comment was? Did you see that?
When? Did someone comment that?
Like a minute ago, yeah.
Okay, hold on. I
want to address that if that's the.
Just go for
it. Just address it, and I'll find it.
Okay. So sometimes people are saying things, and maybe I apologize if this wasn't the comment. Do you really think an assistant like that would come to USC and coach for Clay Helton? Yes. Okay. It's USC. That's what it is. You can't say, well, no one would ever want to blah, blah, blah. They would. No, that's bull crap. Okay. It's USC. They're a top 5 program all time. Even with Clay Helton, who's, a lot of people are criticizing. They won the Rose Bowl. They won the Pac-12. They are still the alpha dog on the West Coast. If USC wants to go out and get a great assistant coach, pay them the money, yes, they will listen. They will come. Not every coach is going to come, but plenty of them will. If you think this woe is me group that's like, the no good coach would ever come, that's such bull crap. Do not listen to anyone that says that. You are full of crap. You can get them. You have to go out and try to get them. Dylan McCullough was doing backflips to come to USC. He's like, wait, I can walk into a recruit's office or home and go, yeah, you want to come to USC? I was trying to do that to Indiana, and it was like jumping through fiery hoops to get a guy to come. If I'm at USC and a guy he wants to come to USC, so yes, you can get good assistant coaches. You have to want to and have to try to get them. Not getting your friends from Western Kentucky, getting the best guys in the country, and plenty of them will come to USC. Rant over. Okay, boom.
And Tyson was a good hire. Tyson was a guy that was wanted by other programs too. Some of the other hires not necessarily the same.
Well, you mentioned friends from Western Kentucky. A lot of the people on Helton's staff are family friends or people he's really close with. How much does that affect him being like, this is probably not the right fit, but I know you really well, and I might not pull the trigger as easily as I might if I don't know you as well?
That's a tough decision, and that comes down to Clay Helton saying, hey, is my friendship and, is that worth more than this opportunity as a head coach, and not ruffling a couple feathers, and instead of going for what's maybe best for the team, is he going to look out for his friends or is he going to look out for the team first?
Well, yeah, and I think the friendship thing, it becomes the thing. If you remember Lane Kiffin getting pressured to basically fire his dad, Monty Kiffin, all of that stuff gets a little bit, Neil Callaway, a lot of people criticizing the offensive line. He's basically Clay Helton's uncle. He was brought up with him, and Kim Helton, his dad, they had all coached together, and all these people have coached on the same staffs and stuff. It's if you have to fire him, it's basically like firing your relative, and all that. But I think at this point, early on in his career, like I said, you kind of, he was given a job that his resume didn't match. Clay Helton's resume did not match USC, but he was he coached there. They needed some stability. they made the decision to hire him. So agree, disagree, whatever they did. And I think in the beginning, you kind of just fill your staff with people that you're familiar with. I think at this point now, you can spread your wings a little bit and say, okay, I don't need only people that I've known for a while. His resume, his Rolodex, that's like an old reference. People were questioning that. It's like, how many coaches did he really know? And how many, he's got this wide network of coaches he can tap into? Probably not, but you still have the USC name. And if you make a few phone calls, you're like, hey, you're this great offensive line coach from wherever. Would you like to be, come and interview at USC? They're like, yeah, I'll come interview at USC.
And I think there's also been a couple of really glaring deficiencies this year. Whereas there weren't quite, the offensive line was better last year, the special teams was better last year. Whereas this year they were not very good, either one of those. There was just a lot of inconsistency on both of those, and particularly the special teams was pretty bad all season.
The question now becomes, though, in regards specifically to the O-line, if Helton decides that he wants to move on from Callaway, do you still – that will be the sixth O-line coach in 7 years. Do you really want to go with that continuity, that lack of continuity? I mean, how much of USC's O-line errors have been guys not being coached by a single coach for the time that they've been at SC? I mean, do you still – is it bad enough where you go, okay, no continuity, we need fresh blood in here? Is that – how do you weigh that?
I mean, I think it's a really good point. You could argue last year they were better on the offensive line than they were this year. If they didn't get better, with 1 year of continuity, I don't know if a second year is going to help. That's the problem. It's hard because Neil Callaway is not a guy that – he's definitely an older guy. Doesn't seem like, as far as player relations go, he's like the best at it. He's terrible at media relations. We can't really get much out of him. So it's hard for us to even – offensive line is hard because – it's hard to watch, even especially at USC. They're usually practicing kind of far away. Even if, Shotgun probably watches it more than anybody. And it's still not easy to kind of evaluate what you're seeing. And a lot of times, a coach can kind of help you with like talking to you about what they're doing, what the plans are. And you kind of get a better feel like, okay, I see what he's doing here and I see why they're doing that or whatever. We get nothing from Neil Callaway. So it's hard. It's kind of a way for a coach to defend themselves a little bit, especially a position that's hard to evaluate. We just don't get any of that from Neil Callaway, plus the fact that it's like this family friend sort of thing. If the unit isn't performing well and there's all these other negative factors, it's going to be hard for, I think, Clay Helton to not make a move there. And if he doesn't, it's going to be, highly criticized by, pretty much everybody.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to Jeb, who says, what is the USC identity? Do we want the pro style system or the spread? We got Sears, Fink, and Daniels. What's it going to be?
Balance is the identity.
Is that an identity? No. That's an ideal.
Daniel's pretty athletic. Daniels is pretty athletic. I'll have a bunch of highlights video from him. I mean, he might be the best quarterback here at the Army Bowl, and he was supposed to be a junior. Like all the 247 guys we're talking to are raving about Daniels. He's definitely the best on the West. That includes Matt Corral, former USC commit. I mean, he's just crushing it down here. And when I talked to him, I had a one-on-one interview from Sunday we put up, and he was really candid about stuff. And he wasn't worried about his performance here at all. He was here basically to recruit for USC. So the fact that he's actually performing well is pretty special. But I think it's going to be still spread. I don't think you're going to see any kind of, they're going back to I formation or anything like that. Still spread. And a guy like JT Daniels, if Darnold does leave, I think he's the potential to take over right away. He's been that good here, but I think he's athletic enough. He can still do that. It's not like Sam Darnold runs all the time. We've seen JT Daniels run this year more. I think something that he's been focused on because the criticism was he wasn't very mobile, but he's pretty mobile. So I wouldn't see them having to change their offense if he came in to whatever they're doing now. I think Daniels would be fine doing that too.
Let's go to Gerald, who says, what does the coaching staff have to do to make the team more physical? We were getting punked all game against Ohio State.
I mean, it starts with full pad practice. I mean, you can't practice soft and expect to play hard. I mean, that's basically the gist of it. USC, there are a lot of concerns in this season when you have 12 straight games, the injury concerns, injuries starting to mount up. I understand a lot of those times when you can't go full pad. It made sense to go to no pad November a little earlier this season because of that. But then you get in the ball prep and the difference in making one pad practice and then not doing anything else, would seem like you would want to get the guys locked back in. They've actually had a couple weeks off, which is something they hadn't had all season. They would want to lock them back in. Like, we're going to go hard these first couple practices, get back in that mindset that we want to hit, we want to be physical, and then carry that into the game. And that just didn't seem to be the case.
And you had a good point before, and Dan Weber talked about this. So when he was in Dallas for the week leading up to the game, Ohio State had one more practice and 2 fully padded practices in the week leading up to the Cotton Bowl. USC had none, and one less practice. They had 1 full pad practice to start camp. To start like bowl prep, and then that was it. And I assume Urban Meyer had at least 3 or 4 of those in the couple weeks leading up to going to Dallas. Keely's point was, sorry to make it for you, but just like even when you were doing no pads November, you had a game every week, so you were putting full pads on at least once a week. You have to do it. It's a rule for a game. You got to put the full pads on. So USC was forced to do that. They didn't do that at all. So they were going much less in pads the week leading up to the bowl game too. And I know we talk about it all the time. I just think it sends a different message. When players I talk to, if they go to the locker room and they see shells or they see, oh, we got to put full pads on, it changes their mentality going into the practice. You don't have to tackle the ground all the time. You don't have to run Oklahoma drill every day. But if the players know, hey, I'm putting full pads on today, it's a different sort of mindset. And so I don't know what it is. Maybe it's stuck in the sanctions mentality, and I get what Lane Kiffin and them guys had to do, but that's over now. Like, there's no reason, in my opinion, and everyone I've talked to that knows football, I haven't heard anyone say, that does make sense. They shouldn't practice in full pads. It seems like they're afraid of doing something. I have no idea why it is. It doesn't seem that hard. Hey, let's practice in full pads. It'll make people happy. For any reason, it just seems like that's the right thing to do.
Are they hearing things from players? Because the players are happy about it. But, how much do you want your players happy versus being prepared? I just don't – you said my point, but I just don't understand how – if you don't practice in full pads for almost a month, per se, how do you think you're going to be ready? I just don't understand.
Yeah. Just making the players happy isn't always the greatest thing. Like, yeah, if you're a babysitter and the kid's happy because you gave them M&Ms for dinner, like, that's fine. That's the kid's happy, but is it the best thing to do to give them M&Ms for dinner? I would like M&Ms for dinner, but I don't know.
I was about to say, I want M&Ms. I'm trying to find a question. A lot of people are just taking out their anger in the comment section, which is fine.
Don't take it out on us. We're here to help. We're here for.
Yeah. Oh, I found the question that you were talking about, Christian. Ryan called you out. Assistants will play for Clay Helton.
Yes, Christian.
Someone asked much earlier, where does St. Brown end up? Ryan being in San Antonio, what's kind of been the vibe on Amon-Ra St. Brown, and how's he been performing down there?
He's been very good. I'm putting up a highlight video of him right now. Him and, with JT Daniels being the best quarterback here, and that's obviously his guy. They've connected a lot, deep balls. He's doing like one-handed catches and stuff. He's ridiculous, and everyone thinks he's going to end up at USC. He'll announce on Saturday. So all the intel we're getting is that he'll end up with his boy JT Daniels, and he's really good at playing football. And the highlights I have for the first 2 days of practice, so it's about 4.5 minutes of just him catching balls. So he did a lot in the couple days I've been here.
How good is he? I think I saw Greg Biggins compare it, said he's one of the top 3 wide receivers he's seen in Southern California, with Deshaun Jackson and Robert Woods coming out of high school. Would you put him up in that class, or is there someone you maybe could compare him to?
Yeah, I think so. He's definitely up there. I trust what Greg's saying, and talk to JT. He's like, man, JT doesn't have he's only 18 years old or something, but he's like, yeah, he's the best I've ever seen. And a lot of people have said that. People kind of look at like a Joseph Lewis last year, who there's athleticism and size and all that kind of stuff. And I think Amon-Ra has a lot of that too, but he also has like the gamemanship. He just performs. Like, I think we've seen that where there's guys that have like all this athletic upside and everything, but they don't necessarily aren't making all the best plays all the time. Like, he's just always there. Like, if there's a huge play to be made, like, he makes it, so that's why it just seems like he's not someone that's like maxed out in his ability. He's got all this like upside, but he's doing everything possible. Like, it seems like every time he's in the game, he's just doing whatever he can to make a huge play.
Yeah.
Super polished too. Runs great routes and everything as well.
He's a smart kid too. I was impressed by his. I had to transcribe an interview, and he's a smart kid.
Yeah, his dad was Mr. Universe and stuff. It's crazy. You know, he has a brother at Notre Dame and another brother at Stanford and stuff. So it's not like they're a dumb kid. They're smart kids, you know.
So for him, if he were to commit to USC, he would actually get to play both of his brothers every year, and all three brothers would play each other every year because Notre Dame has games with Stanford and USC. So that may actually be an extra draw for the family to see the kind of the triangle of all three brothers playing against each other.
One could say it's a family feud.
Ooh.
Ooh. Okay.
Product
you guys have a podcast coming up? Do you have a family feud?
We have a podcast coming up. Okay, let's go to Christian. He says, how long is the leash for Helton with him not being Lynn Swann's hire?
Okay, so last year they won the Rose Bowl, and Lynn Swann didn't seem all that happy about it. He was definitely more about winning the Pac-12 championship game, which they did. So I think that's a positive step for Clay Helton, but he doesn't like to get embarrassed against national, on a national stage like they did in the Cotton Bowl. He didn't really talk much after he was in Dallas. I don't think that sat very well with him. So I don't think he's got the longest leash, but there's going to be a decision made. I think they have to do some sort of contract thing at this point because it's been a couple years. That'll be curious to see. I think this offseason we'll kind of learn more, but it's not like he's on the verge of getting fired, but the way they won this year, like 11-3, didn't look as good, I think, to Lynn Swann as it does to maybe if you're just looking at like with the resume. Hey, they went 11-3 and won all that stuff. He wants to see teams be dominated when USC should, and they didn't most of the year. So I think Lynn Swann feels like a lot of the fans do. So it's not like he's sitting pretty skating on thick ice right now. It's not like thin ice, but there's certainly some issues there with Lynn Swann. So I think part of that, there'd be some pressure from the athletic directors to make sure that there's some changes. So next year, you're not like skating by some of the weaker teams and then getting blown out by the greatest teams.
What does it say about Helton's situation that right after winning the Pac-12 championship, Swann had a huge scrum around him and asked if the security of Helton's job? Does that mean anything? Because he just won the championship, and yet Swann's being asked these things.
I think it's just a kind of a reflection of the fans. A lot of fans are not confident in Clay Helton. There's a very, it's kind of a 50-50 mix. People are supporting Clay Helton versus people saying, I hope we win, but I don't think Clay Helton's the guy. So I think that's just kind of a response to that is where that question actually came from.
Interesting. We have Alan says, what's Jonathan Lockett's status?
We actually saw Jonathan Lockett in Dallas. First time we actually seen him doing much. I don't know if he actually practiced last week. I know they did get a couple players back with Isaiah Polamau and Greg Johnson getting some practice time. Getting some guys back from injury is good. Jonathan Lockett's a guy who was starting for USC, kind of got forgotten when he got injured. I think when he gets an opportunity to take over or he gets an opportunity to come back, then he has a good chance to be right in that mix for that nickelback spot again, or one of those cornerback spots, depending on how if Iman Marshall leaves or if he stays, or if Jack Jones is ready to actually take over that spot. After he's been injured as well a little bit at the end of the season too. So I think adding an extra body to that cornerback group is going to be really good for USC. And somebody that was playing really well last year before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Eli says, do you see changes coming in the coaching staff, and how much does the loss affect our recruiting outlook?
Coaching staff, we're still waiting to see, and Ryan can answer your loss to affect the recruiting.
Yeah, I think coaching staff changes need to be made. I don't think there's a guarantee that they will be made. So it's going to be a lot of the pressure that's on Clay Helton, like we said, maybe from Lynn Swann, from fans. There's definitely outside pressure. I know from sources he's feeling pressure to make changes. Does he want to make the changes? I'm not exactly sure, but I think they're going to need to be made. So we'll kind of see. But as far as one loss doesn't impact about the early signing period, there's dudes already signed, so it's moved up the process. Losing a bowl game doesn't really change guys' mind all that much. Down the road, more for the next class or two, like that could have more of an impact. But recruits aren't looking at it like a fan where one game is like, oh my God, they lost a bowl game, I'm not going to go there anymore. Like a lot of times losses can make a recruit want to go there more because like, hey, I can go there and fix this problem. If you're an offensive lineman, you're like, hey, I can go there and start over some of those guys. So it's definitely, recruiting minds are different then, and every recruit's different. Sometimes a recruit wants to go to the front runner, and if you lose the bowl game and they're not the front runner anymore, they're out. And other ones are like, hey, I want to go there because I can make an impact right away. So I wouldn't put a whole, the Cotton Bowl loss doesn't mean the recruiting class is going away or anything like that.
Anon says, a potentially controversial question, when's Jamel Cook going to get an opportunity? They moved him to corner, but with Chris Hawkins graduating, will they move him back to safety? What is Jamel Cook's status? Of course, he had that cheap shot in the Cotton Bowl. Do we know what the outlook is for him and his status at USC?
Well, he at least was academically eligible. So he was dressed for the Cotton Bowl, unlike Keely Ross, who reportedly was eligible because of his academics. So he did not travel with the team. Jamel Cook did. I know that was a concern for USC. He apparently got basically a couple weeks off of practice to focus on his academics, and he did that. So I don't know what it's going to take for him to get in the good graces of the coaching staff. I mean, we have been clamoring all season about he should at least be on special teams. Their special teams is terrible. Why not put somebody and get them some experience? And he can be terrible too if it need be. But they didn't give him an opportunity. They moved him to that nickelback spot. He made some plays there in the spring and moved him to the cornerback spot. He's still learning those positions. He would like to play all of them because he would like to play anywhere on the defense. He's told me before. So he's going to keep trying to learn as much as he can. Is that here at USC? Is that somewhere else? If he gets fed up and doesn't think that they're going to give him an opportunity, then he's probably in the right to try to transfer somewhere. If the coaching staff tells him, hey, we're going to give you this opportunity next year, then maybe it keeps him around. But we still don't know. I don't think he's going to move back to safety just because of the guys they have there, unless maybe Marvell Tell leaves early. If that happens, then maybe you would see, they move someone to increase the numbers at safety because you're going to lose Matt Lopes and you're going to lose Chris Hawkins, both those guys graduating. If Marvell Tell leaves, then you get pretty thin there really quickly. So then maybe you have to move him back. So a lot of this, and the same thing with recruiting, it depends on what some of those guys that have an opportunity to leave early do.
Should one read into the fact that during one presser, I think a couple of weeks ago, Helton said, we like to get the inexperienced guys on special teams and get them work, which begs the question, why isn't Jamel Cook on special teams? Is that a glaring oversight? Like, how do you not put a guy like Jamel on special teams?
I mean, you have to earn your playing time on the field and off the field. And apparently there's something there, whether it's, I don't know if it's his attitude or it was the grades itself, they have not thought that he's earned that playing time apparently. Or he's just really in the doghouse and can't get out there. I don't know.
It's the weirdest thing. He should have been playing, and the fact that he wasn't, I just don't see him being on the team next year. I just can't, especially with the fight at the end. Nothing has indicated to me that he's going to be long for this football program anymore. So it's unfortunate because I think he can be a really good player, but for whatever off the field or other reasons, it just didn't seem like it was going to work out. So I'm guessing he's not going to be on the team next year.
Multiple people have asked, are fans as a whole being too critical of Helton given that it's only his second year as head coach? Should there be more grace given to Helton?
So I would say no, because you're still the head coach of USC. So under the circumstances, the way he was hired, yes, you can say, well, he was blah, all the stuff that happened. Everyone knows, everything that kind of happened the way he got hired, but you're still the head coach at USC. There's not like some 5-year learning period where you get to get better as a coach. When you hire someone that's never had the job before, they're going to have to learn on the job, but you're still going to have high expectations. It's still USC. So I think you do have to look at, hey, winning the Rose Bowl is great, winning the Pac-12 is great, but you have to make sure you're making progress in the right direction. There's a lot of people speculating that, most of his success is about, Sam Darnold kind of going crazy and all that kind of stuff. It all remains to be seen, but it's unfortunate. He's put in a weird position, but he was given an amazing job. So you're going to have probably unrealistic expectations, but because it's the head coach at USC, I think it's fair. You're still, the expectations are high. I get you've only been the head coach for 2 years, but you're the head coach of USC, and it's not a training ground. You have to be, and you have to get developed. You have to develop and get better. And this offseason, I think it's important for him to develop and get better. And that's a part of that is getting rid of some of the dead weight on the staff and replacing it with really high talented, profile guys that you can add to your assistant coaching staff.
To answer the question much quicker than Ryan, I would say yes, but not at USC. I mean, it's not the place to be learning on the job. And exactly what Ryan said. You would think that, if you take this position, the expectations that come with it, and I think he understands that.
He does.
Angel says, why do the plays take so long to be called? Seems like they're trying to run out the clock. Ryan, I know you talked about this a lot in your emergency podcast. You felt like there was something a little weird going on.
There was something strange, and I don't know exactly what it was, but you felt like with two people in the press box, Tyson Helton and T. Martin, that there was some sort of, collaboration between the two, that maybe that would slow things down, get down to the field, and then on to Sam Darnold. You thought that might be cleared up a little bit, and if anything, it seemed to get a little worse. Scott Wolf reported, he tweeted, it wasn't really a report, but he just tweeted that Brian Ellis was calling like the passing play. So maybe they had a GA come in and be involved in the play calling. If that's true, I don't know, but something seemed off, and, it was off during the season a little bit, and it was off now, and it was worse in the game. And when you're down 3 scores and it's taking you 30 seconds to call a running play in the fourth quarter, like something isn't right. So it wasn't flowing the way it should have been flowing. And I know people are kind of blaming T. Martin and stuff, but we've seen a lot of this sort of all year. It just got even worse, in this final game. So I don't know exactly what it was. We didn't get the availability of the coaches after the game. We had the quick press conference with Clay Helton, and that was it. Usually there's like a post-season conference call. We inquired about that. They didn't plan on doing one. So I think there's a lot of questions that we haven't got answers to. And until USC is going to make some people available to talk, I don't know when we're going to get them.
You think that's weird that they kind of shied away from having their usual post-conference call?
Yeah. I mean, we emailed Tim Tessalone, the sports information director. He's like, nothing planned. And it's like, well, there's normally something planned. I'm not exactly sure why, especially with the way that the post-game press conference was, where it was just going to be like this. They were going to give out all the transcripts. So most of us didn't even go to that. We didn't get to talk to Clay. We went to the locker room because we wanted to try to get individual player reaction. So it's a little disappointing that we haven't got those kind of answers. And, signing day, I guess we'll be able to talk to some of these guys. Maybe they're going to have some sort of press conference for like all the juniors or whatever, or if Sam Darnold, I don't know, maybe something like that. But, until we get to talk to them about the flow of that offense, why was it so slow? We're just not going to know.
Mm-hmm. Anon also asked, do you think USC needs a new strength coach?
You would like to see some guys stronger, especially after the pro day last year. We'll see if there's improvements this year, especially with some of those numbers, which were the actual just straight weightlifting numbers were pretty bad last year. So we'll see if that is improved. But it's hard to say that, this strength coach definitely has to be fired, or, this one's – you can tell when they're doing a really good job when you're just pushing everybody around. But also it comes down to the players. And I think Porter Gustin, doesn't matter who his strength coach is, Porter Gustin's still going to be a beast in the weight room. You have to have guys that are interested and want to, and better themselves. And you've seen some guys that are around Porter Gustin, but is the whole team bought into that philosophy? Or, is the weight room scene is something you don't want to be part of? I remember in college, I didn't want to be in the weight room ever. Not my thing. But I was playing baseball, and I was like, why are we got to be in the weight room for baseball? It doesn't make any sense. In high school, when I was playing football, I was like, this is great. I'm actually adding muscle. This is crazy when I was playing football. But in baseball, I was like, man, this doesn't make any sense. So I can see it both ways. You got players that aren't interested in that, whereas you got others that are workout warriors. So you have to find someone that can motivate everyone to be a workout warrior when they're in the gym.
Workout warrior. Sean Simmons says, how many defensive tackles, offensive linemen will we get in this class? I say we need at least 3 to 4 defensive tackles.
I don't think you need 3 or 4 when you just brought in a class that included Marlon Tuipulotu and Brendan Keely and those Jay Tufele as well. Jay Tufele hadn't even seen the field this year, redshirting. So I think you got a good class last year. It's always good to add 1 or 2 each season. But the fact that USC doesn't play a ton of defense tackles, doesn't play the nose tackle position much, that means it's not necessarily as big a priority. And similar to the offensive line, you brought in 5 last year, so you don't have to bring as big of a class in this year. Though you would have really liked to bring in a guy named Jackson Carman, but that didn't happen. Whoops.
Judy says, I joined the broadcast late, but what's your take on the T. Martin situation? We didn't fully address T. Martin. How do you guys feel about all of that mess.
Not
mess, situation. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I don't know what like the situation is as far as like him. I think he would have liked to get a head coaching job. Tennessee didn't talk to him about that. I don't think he was all that interested in being an assistant somewhere. I think, I think he's trying to groom himself to become a head coach someday. And when we talked to him during bowl practice, he was like happy as a clam to be there. He wanted to be at USC, and his wife loves it, be on the West Coast, and she's, in the music industry and all that kind of stuff. So he seemed pretty happy. Now, if something changed where Clay Helton put a graduate assistant next to him to help him call plays, that could be a potential issue. If that really happened, I don't know. I really thought it was going to be a smooth bowl game with only one like head up there, calling plays. It didn't run smoothly. So we don't know exactly why. But I think T. Martin gets probably more blame than he probably should. I think he shouldered a lot of that on himself, but he seemed pretty happy to be at USC. Now, we haven't talked to him since. Maybe we'll get a chance to after like signing day or something. But yeah, I guess that's my take on it. What do you think, Shaka?
T. Martin seemed like he was happy, and it seemed like he was going to get the opportunity to just take over the play calling, and then the report comes out that maybe he didn't. So that's something to try to nudge him to take another job or something. Maybe there's some infighting behind the scenes that we don't know about. But it seemed like T. Martin had been pretty happy, with his opportunity. He was contacted by Tennessee, but not for the head coaching position. I talked about how I thought the UCF job would be a job that would be good for him to go after, something in that same realm where there's fertile recruiting grounds, but at a smaller school, he can prove himself for a year or two. So he could come back and have a great season, especially if you can talk Sam Darnold and come back, and maybe he skips that step. He can go straight to one of the inferior SEC teams or a Big Ten team or a Big 12 team or something like that. I think his recruiting ability makes him that much more an attractive candidate for a head coaching position. But, he has to show – and he's only been doing the offense coordinator position for 2 years. So he has to show that he can show improvements in that position as well before he gets that big-time opportunity.
And we might see some more coaching carousel stuff happen because, Rich Rod just got fired. So who knows, they could start a whole nother domino thing sort of going. But I'm curious to see because he did seem happy going into the bowl game. But I thought it would be like Shotgun said, him just calling all the plays. According to Wolf, that wasn't the case. I would be pretty upset if I was him that, hey, this is finally just let me call all the plays, let me run things. And they put a GA next to me and have him help. I don't know. I mean, Dan wrote some interesting stuff on the Peristyle about that, where he feels like Brian Ellis was just kind of taking over the same duties that Tyson Helton had. But I really felt the most important thing would be if there was some kind of ambiguity, like who's calling what and all that stuff, just let your offensive coordinator call the plays for this one and be smooth. It didn't seem like it ran all that smoothly. Everyone saw that. Just something seemed off. So it should have gone the other way, and it didn't. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll try to find out why. We just haven't been able to talk to anyone to get a real answer yet.
And as Ryan said, there's going to be more coaching changes because you just had Black Monday for the NFL, so that opens up some positions there. So guys move up. The coaching staffs change when new head coaches take over at positions. Maybe that opens up a position for someone from a college rank to be added to a new staff or something like that. So you see two different sets of coaching carousel. You see the one basically before, now it's the one in December with college coaches. I was going to say before signing day, but then you see the one in January, February when NFL teams also make changes. So then you see that change, that carousel open up once more. So we'll see some more changes. Then you'll see if USC has made some changes as well.
There's also that 10th assistant that will be added.
10th assistant as well coming in. I'm available, USC or any other place that wants to throw some money at me.
Wow.
Just saying.
Okay.
Not saying, I'm just saying.
Dennis Lane says, who are you impressed with on this coaching staff other than Clancy?
I mean, I think I've made it known to Keely and a couple other people that I think Kenichi Udeze is a star in the making on the defensive line. I don't know what his aspirations are as far as going forward, but his group has been terrific the last two seasons. Just seeing the the improvement of guys like Malik Dorton or even Brandon Keely from when he first got thrown in. Rasheem Green in particular, who KU said he wanted to body slam when he first took over the job, but just because he wasn't utilizing his talent as best as he could. And their focus on the small details, I think that's something that really stands out with that group, and how much they were able to bat down passes, because that's something they work on as well. I think that is one coach I think has been terrific for USC since the hire, even though people didn't think that was going to be a good hire because he had no experience.
Yeah, I actually interviewed him after the Cotton Bowl, and I was just really impressed. I've talked to him before, but just talking to him one-on-one, he was just so impressive. And I asked, like, how do you turn the page after a loss like this when your D-line played well? And he was like, coaching never stops for me. I'm texting my guys tomorrow. I'm looking at film on the ride home. Like, he was like, I'm not stopping. It continues. So it was just really impressive to talk to him like that. Also, I would add Dylan McCullough, but I think Ryan's gonna choose that. You can take it, Ryan.
No, I agree with you there. I mean, Dennis mentioned Clancy, and I feel like he did a great job. Now, he always comes in with a game plan. I feel like the defense in general all year did a lot more with less. If you look at the defensive line or the defensive front, everybody, I mean, how many first-round draft picks do they have? We were talking to Daniel Jeremiah on the sideline. He felt that maybe Uchenna Nwosu could be, but for the most part, he felt that was the only guy that could start on the USC defense for Ohio State. And they still come with a game plan every week. And, you know, it's very aggressive. I think it suits the USC athletes. And I think they do a pretty good job of it. You know, it doesn't work all the time and people give them crap or whatever. But I feel like Clancy Pendergast is doing a pretty good job at USC. So I'm glad Dennis mentioned him. You know, Dylan McCullough, like Keely mentioned, the fact that these running backs were able to get so many more yards after contact this year, that's a super area of improvement. Ball security has been great. He's done a lot of those kind of drills. You know, you drill those things in practice and you kind of see the fruits of that in the games. And I think like kind of an underrated guy who I honestly felt should have been out the door as soon as Steve Sarkisian left was Johnny Nansen. They were just kind of tied at the hip. I think he's sort of reinvented himself. He's been great on the recruiting trail. Him and BKU, I think, have done a lot of good things there. I think he's done a really good job at his position too. So a guy that I didn't have high expectations for that I thought probably should have been gone. I think he's come along and done a nice job there too. So I like the question too, because we talk about some of the negativity of you know, different positions and what, you know, let's mention some of the positive ones. That's the guys we think are doing a good job.
Let's see. I guess on a sadder note, Jake says, which position coach do you think is the most likely to be changed over the offseason?
Most likely.
Yes.
Not necessarily the most deserved. I kind of think defensive backs. I feel like, and I'm not saying that it's not deserved. I've been critical, certainly there, but I think with the combination of not being the most dynamic recruiter and the way the secondaries performed, I think that he could probably move on and get some kind of job in the NFL. I think if you had to pick one position coach that isn't there, I think that's probably the most likely. Shaka, do you have thoughts or no?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if it necessarily would be a firing, but there might just be a change.
Yeah. I think that's part of Clayton's personality too, that you might not see. It's kind of like a kid decommitted when a school stopped recruiting him. Like USC, I don't think Clay Helton wants to go out and say, I'm firing this guy. He'd rather like go try to find that guy a job somewhere and let him move on. So I think you might see that. And, you know, that seems kind of a likely thing to happen.
We're seeing a lot of get Jack Del Rio, bring back Norm Chow. There's a lot of –
oh, my God. No.
There's a lot of weird suggestions coming in.
Jack Del Rio could be a defense coordinator, but you probably don't want him as your head coach coming straight out of the NFL, being gone for so many years, because then you'll have the Herm Edwards situation.
Yeah,
I thought Jeff Fisher, but at least there was recruiting. I mean, at least he was coaching recently. Herm Edwards has been he's coached the Army All-America for 8 years or something. Like that's the craziest thing ever. But no, you don't stop with the name. I've heard this name before. He played at USC. Let's get him. USC's been doing that a lot. Like all their athletic directors, yeah, you heard of them because they played at USC. Stop doing that stuff. Just get guys who are good at coaching, not necessarily because you've heard their name before and they used to wear cardinal and gold. So let's kind of move away from that if we can.
I did see somewhere yesterday, since Carson Palmer retired, that people said that he should be USC's quarterback coach.
Yep, someone tweeted me that.
That'd be the wrong Palmer. You want Jordan Palmer, not Carson Palmer.
Yeah. And here's the thing on that, which I would definitely say, look, just because he played at USC and he won the Heisman and all that kind of stuff, But if it's something that if Sam Darnold wanted him and Sam Darnold, it would like make Sam Darnold happy for the year or something, I would almost be on board with that. But in general, I'm not on board with that kind of stuff. But if it'll keep Sam Darnold around another year and it will help his development, then I would go with it. But for the most part, I'm like anti all that kind of stuff.
Really? You were anti the players having a say in Helton, but now if one player wants a coach, you're okay with it?
It's Sam freaking Darnold, dude. Like, that's why. Like, like he was a coach. Okay. It's basically his position coach. If he's going to come back, he's going to be a, whatever pick, and it's going to help him, whatever. If that's help, I think this window is closing quickly. So I would be with it. It's Sam Darnold. So it's like, if it was him or Tyler Vaughn, I'd let them pick,
Of course. Okay, we're at the end of questions unless you had one that I missed.
A couple from earlier. Okay. Do football players who go pro?
Norm Chow, Xavier. What? No Norm Chow. No.
No.
We're just trying to rapid fire these last couple ones that I kind of copied over that scrolled through too quickly. Do football players who go pro early receive honorary degrees? That's a no, right? Because I know the guys come back and I don't know if they get a sheet of paper or something randomly. They didn't give me a sheet of paper for honorary. But
honorary degrees, like if he gets famous and comes back later and is a comedian or something, like Will Ferrell, I think gets an honorary degree or something, but not.
Yeah, but that's why we have actually seen like Robert Woods and Marquise Lee and those guys actually on campus, during the summers and stuff during the off season for the NFL in previous years, because they're coming back to work on those last couple classes they need. Why did USC throw so much to Deontay Burnett when he clearly wasn't on at the beginning of the game? And we have receivers like Michael Pittman Jr. and Tyler Vaughn. Well, because he's your go-to guy. You still throw the guy even if he's struggling a little bit because he's been so consistent for you throughout his career. Can Clay Helton ever win a national title with those play calls and zero sense of urgency with 7 minutes down by 17? Ryan, what do you think of the urgency of USC?
There was no urgency, and you're not winning a national title if you're down 17 with 7 minutes left anyway. So most likely
That is not true. If you watch the Georgia-Oklahoma game, or if you watch Sam Darnold last year, if you just watch a Rose Bowl, if the Rose Bowl was the title game, then you would say, 7 minutes, 17, that doesn't seem like too much.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Rose Bowl was fantastic.
But the way they played, it looked like they were trying to run out the clock. So, no, you're not winning a title if you're trying to just not be embarrassed.
It was so kind of baffling. It's like if you score once, it's a 10-point game. I mean, late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, it's taking so much time. If they just get a little bit of momentum because the defense was playing so well, but it just didn't happen. They were not trying to make it happen. It didn't seem.
And I wanted to see them score because at least it would put the way Urban Meyer was calling it was like he was fine with the game being in limbo, in purgatory. He didn't care. If nothing changed, he's fine. They're up 17. You weren't going to see JT Barrett try to push the envelope a little bit until USC scored, and USC never did. So, I mean, in one aspect, it's probably good for Clancy Pendergast because his defense could play like a vanilla front. They weren't going to see anything crazy, just try to stop them. But what if USC scores and it's now a 10-point game? Does the offensive scheme change on Ohio State side? And who knows? Maybe USC forces a turnover or something, and you can get some more momentum. But you didn't. You didn't put your defense in a position to make a play. They were doing what they needed to do, stop them, but you could have forced some negative plays and maybe get some momentum back if USC could have scored, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, if they score, maybe Ohio State actually throws the ball a little bit in the second half, and USC picks the ball off. They change the complete dynamic of the game. Do you think USC will ever add a fullback, H-back into the offense? I noticed that all 4 playoff teams employed a lead blocker in aspects of the running game. No. Not with this offense.
Didn't they try to use Amar Bebe as H-back a little bit?
Well, they've used Amar Bebe in a type of an H-back situation where they use 2 tight ends. They'll bring him inside behind a guard or something to use as a lead blocker. But Amar Bebe hasn't been a great blocker all season, so that's probably not the best place to be looking. They have to get better blocking at the fullback and the tight end spots. I mean, your one fullback, Ruben Peters, got a little bit of play last year, not as much this year. But you're not going to see that much in the USC offense. Yeah. It sounds like Trevor Trout is buddies with Michael Thompson Jr. Any chances that USC lands a second defensive tackle from St. Louis? Ryan, what's the vibe with Michael Thompson down in St.
I've been mostly watching the skill guys, but from talking to Gerard, it seems like he hasn't been performing all that well. So I don't have a ton of intel on him, but Trevor Trout's going to end up signing in February. He told me so, but he's not here. I haven't talked to Michael Thompson yet, so sorry I don't have much more on that.
That's all I got.
Any more questions? Let's see. Someone asked about Port Augusta. Do you think he will leave?
Nope.
Tom says
Doesn't
that.
have enough tape.
Goodbye, Tom.
Yeah. I think most of the players are going to end up staying. Like I know there's players that make bad decisions every year. I think for the most part, I don't think you're going to see that much this year. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I just kind of get the feeling most dudes will end up coming back.
I think Jones is gone. I think probably
Ronald Jones.
Ronald Jones.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Jones.
Yes, a lot of Jones.
Velus Jones is staying. I'm pretty sure of that. And then Sam Darnold's kind of the wild card. I think you got two guys that are probably leaving, and then a wild card. But USC is going to really hurt if Rasheem Green leaves, just because of how impactful he was in that line without people really even knowing how good he was.
Let's see if there's one last question.
Is that one about Chip at UCLA or something, or that just came?
Going up tempo. They said that USC didn't really go up tempo enough. Chip will teach you how to go up tempo. That's what the comment was.
Oh,
USC talked about using tempo going into the bowl game, and then the first half they had the ball so little, the first quarter in particular, that they couldn't go tempo, and then they were down 17-0. They didn't want to use any tempo because they want to make sure they got the exact precise play call in, which didn't work.
Yeah, they needed to do some tempo there, and they just didn't.
Christian says, any news on DJ Johnson? Is USC in the running to get him?
USC is in the running to get him. USC is one of the 8 schools that he was granted permission to speak with about transferring from Miami to, and they're all in the Pac-12, so he's going to be leaving the East Coast, coming back home, because he tweeted a little bit later after announcing that he had a family member that has an illness, so that's why he's coming back to the West Coast from, I think it was Burbank, Sacramento Luther Burbank is where he went to high school at. A edge rusher, outside linebacker, defensive end. I think he was a 4-star guy, and USC got him in for an official visit last year, but was not able to pull him in from Miami. But we'll see if they have a better chance here the second time around.
All right, that pretty much wraps it up. Any final thoughts, comments, questions, concerns from you two?
Not USC doing well in San Antonio, not in Arlington. That seems to be the consensus, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I think the recruiting class is going to be, it'll be good. It's not going to be as big because of, we're just not sure how many, there's just not that many seniors leaving. We'll see what kind of attrition there is, both on the, guys leaving early or just transferring or whatever. But I think the recruiting class will be fine. I think USC was a little bit behind on the early signing period, maybe not realizing how important that was. But the big news being JT Daniels, I think that fixes a lot of potential problems. It's perfect no matter what happens. If Sam stays, JT can redshirt and compete the next year, or if Sam leaves, you got a true freshman that's really supposed to be, a senior in high school that could end up being your starting quarterback, similar to what John David Booty was doing back in the day. So I think the JT Daniels thing really helps a lot, fixes a lot of things. It was funny. When I was talking to him about it, I don't remember if you talked to him about this too, Keely, but I was like, when did you first start hearing, thinking about the reclassification? He's like, well, I started hearing the rumors on social media and stuff first, and he started to look into it. So I thought that was kind of funny. It's like, we were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, maybe I could reclassify. So it seemed kind of strange. I don't know however true that is, but that's what he was telling me.
So what you guys say on the P is important. People listen to it. Inevitably filters out to social media, and then the players hear it. So
players definitely hear what you say.
From negative, positive, or negative. So remember that when you're writing your 3 AM rant on the P. But I think also JT Daniels, how well he's performed in San Antonio so far is really a bright spot for USC. Their players didn't play well in the Cotton Bowl, but their future players are playing pretty well so far in the Army Bowl practice leading up. So that's good news for USC. They'll find out about Amon-Ra St. Brown on Saturday when he makes his decision known during the game. Oh, we got a wink. Somebody put that as an emoji face on Ryan over there. Wink. But, yeah, they'll find out then about that. There'll be a couple more decisions. I don't know if USC is in the running for any of the other players that are going to be announcing, Ryan.
No, there's an offensive. So JT's one of his offensive linemen, Chris Murray. I think there's talk, but USC really hasn't been recruiting him all that much. I think he'd like to go to USC, and he's more of like a guard, and they need more tackles and stuff. But yeah, there's not. It's the whole caps and announcements things are just not going to be as impactful this year because there's so many guys have already signed with their schools. So that changes things a little bit. But one of the biggest stories from the All-American Bowl will be JT Daniels. So watch him on Saturday perform and stuff. They're going to talk about him a lot because I'm sure he's going to come into the game and do well. He loves throwing the ball deep. He'll hit some big plays deep, probably to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they'll be like, that guy's supposed to be a junior in high school, you know.
And one more thing about the Army All-American Bowl is the injured players that will be getting there tomorrow. Some USC targets there as well. Solomon Tuliapupu, I believe Penei Sewell is also injured. He's going to be coming down on Thursday. So JT Daniels said he was going to recruit. The recruiting really starts on Thursday with some of those injured players for some of the USC targets. And
when I talked to JT Daniels, he was so adamant about recruiting for USC. He is a recruiter. So having JT there is huge for USC because he is very charismatic and can recruit well. So that's a bonus for USC.
Yeah, when you have a recruiting class that doesn't have a quarterback, it's like there's something missing. You know, there's not you need that kind of voice. He's the guy that brings everyone together on social media and all that kind of stuff. So having a gap, with Matt Corral being gone, USC just didn't have that anymore. So JT comes in and he's trying to fill that role in spades. He really wants to do it. So he like Keely said, he loves doing it, but it really helps having someone kind of bring all that stuff together. He can be the point man as far as off-site recruiting goes.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Jay Alonso says, any news on Solo visiting SC? Solo. Did you say that?
Solomon Tuliapupu?
Yeah.
I defer to.
No, I don't think he's planned. I think they're still working out all that stuff, right? I don't believe he's set a visit yet, but
he's been pretty low key with everything, with all his recruitment stuff. So we haven't really heard too much about him. Another guy that's down there at USC's recruiting is Isaac Taylor Stewart. I know JT Daniels has been working on him as well.
He hurt his ankle.
Yeah, he hurt his ankle, so he's not going to play. He's hoping to be back for the game. But premium teammates there, so him and Amon-Ra St. Brown, both were teammates with JT Daniels in the 7-on-7 this summer, or this spring. So they're going to be trying to work on him as well if Amon-Ra is indeed winky wink, as Ryan Abraham says to USC.
I think Tuliapupu too. I think he said he didn't want to visit any local schools, but they still might do. I don't know. There was something weird going on like that, but something like that.
Alrighty, that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks for watching our live show.
I think this worked well.
Yeah, we have a new system, maybe, possibly. We'll see. With
the bringing in
from San Antonio. Any final thoughts before we shoot you away?
Yeah, make sure you check out. I mean, we're putting up a ton of content here from San Antonio and USCFootball.com. There'll be highlight videos. So, we can tell you a dude is a 5-star. So we're telling you Amon-Ra is a 5-star. Go look at the video that's going to be up here on the site in a couple of minutes, and you can go yeah, that guy's pretty damn good. So you can judge for yourself if you like him. I'd rather have a taller guy or whatever. But we try to do that to show you hey, here's what we're seeing here. Here's why we think these guys are ranked where they are. So we'll have some pretty good isolation footage that no one really else does. We focus just on that dude. So you want to see Amon-Ra St. Brown, I just shoot him, and you can see him. So I like it, so hopefully you guys do too.
Cool stuff. Sounds cool.
I'm using Keely's camera. I got Keely's camera here. I'm using it.
You do.
So that's why your highlights are coming out good. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh, no. The user is the why it comes out.
Oh, sure.
It's true. It's true.
I'll have the participation charts for you guys from the Cotton Bowl for tomorrow. Been working on the notes as well. I do those every once in a while. I am 3 hours and 43 minutes into working on this at least, and I am in the middle of the second quarter. So
he's writing a novel.
A lot of time and effort going into this for you guys, just so you know exactly what happened in that Cotton Bowl. So we'll have that for you hopefully tomorrow as well.
Yeah, we'll have a podcast. We're about the podcast. Family Feud podcast will be out soon. So a lot of content for you guys. So check it out.
Even though there's not even games going on.
I know.
Crazy.
We got you. Alrighty, we will see you guys soon. For Ryan Abraham for Shotgun, we'll see you soon at some point.